Harley used to stand for rebellion. Now it's fighting for relevance. The new CEO just exposed how the company lost its soul and why riders turned their backs. But his confession might spark a rebirth or a final collapse. If you've ever loved this brand, this story hits home. Watch till the end, because the last moment reveals whether Harley's roar still belongs to the road or to history. The bombshell. Artie Starrs took the stage and every rider felt the tremor. On his very first public statements, he dropped a truth few expected from a new CEO in any industry, let alone one built on pride and legacy. Riders weren't ignored, they were abandoned, he declared. There was no spin, no buffer. Just that raw sentence echoing through Harley showrooms and owner groups that had long whispered discomforts. That moment cracked something open. Longtime owners, folks who've ridden tens of thousands of miles, who've stained their boots with oil and sweat, felt freshly betrayed. The clubhouse spirit, the Friday night rides, the camaraderie built over decades, those weren't just marketing tropes. They were the backbone of this brand. And in that instant, Starrs made it clear that backbone had been compromised. He didn't promise immediate fixes. He didn't offer sugar-coated platitudes. He promised a reckoning. He promised transparency. He promised that by the end of his first year, riders would see what had been happening behind closed doors. That hidden strategy, the plan that Wall Street applauded but riders quietly cursed, would be laid bare. Starrs' words hit like a wave, but the real shock lay in how different his tone was from what came before. The day one confession. Artie Starrs arrived from beyond the two-wheel world. He hadn't grown up in hog culture or biker rallies. He'd spent years leading consumer brands outside motorcycles. Some saw that as risk. Others saw hope. On day one, he leaned into that outsider identity. He stood in contrast directly against Jochen Zeits, whose tenure had long been wrapped in corporate polish, public relations guardrails, and tightly controlled messaging. Where Zeits issued strategic visions, balanced slides, and investor narratives, Starrs gave riders a voice. He refused to deliver another year of gloss. He spoke in plain terms about disconnection. He admitted that under Zeits' tenure, Harley had drifted away from its core audience. That confession broke decades of PR silence. For years, no one in leadership ever owned the gap between boardrooms and parking lots. No one owned it until now. In that moment, the narrative changed. No more euphemisms about realigning priorities or adjusting markets. Starrs said what many had felt but few dared voice. He made it personal. He showed that the shift begins not with slide decks but with admitted mistakes. By the time he closed his remarks, the question that rattled every rider's mind hung in the air. What exactly did Zeits do? The confession opened the door, but what walked through was named the hardwire hangover. If you've ever felt Harley lost its way, hit like and drop a comment with your take. Riders' voices matter now. The hardwire hangover. Under Zeits, Harley launched a strategic blueprint named Hardwire. The plan sounded elegant. Fewer models, sharper premium position, exclusivity, and brand desirability. On paper, it aligned with narratives of lean brands and rising margins. Wall Street cheered. Analysts praised discipline. But riders and dealers watched with growing unease. Hardwire meant cutting models, narrowing allocations, removing price flexibility. It meant raising tag prices, making entry models scarce or expensive. The goal was to make every Harley feel like a prized possession, not something mass-produced. But that exclusivity came at a cost. Dealers reported empty bays, riders found limited choice, long waits for parts, a sense that loyalty had been taxed. It wasn't that the idea was wicked in theory. Every brand competes for prestige, but Harley's prestige rested on accessibility and identity. When desirability shuts the gates, the people who built that identity drift away. In small towns, customers walked into dealerships only to find skeletons. In city stores, models once plentiful turned into rare artifacts. Dealers once flush with pride now whispered desperation over thin margins and shrinking walks. By midterm, cult icons of the brand felt like relics behind glass. loyalty wavered, enthusiasts balked, and everywhere a silent erosion settled in. But the betrayal ran deeper than pricing. It struck the heart of the bike itself. Every product I mention is linked in the description: safety gear, shop tools, and touring add-ons. Check it out, then let's keep going. The electric misfire. Livewire stood for change. It was meant to signal Harley's leap into tomorrow. Instead, it became proof of misalignment. On launch, the price tag hovered near $30,000, far beyond what many lifelong Harley community members could rationalize. Some saw a plastic shell, others heard a lost roar. The gulf between rider expectation and electric reality yawned. Range proved limited in real conditions. Charging times dragged. Touring, the emotional core of the brand, cracked under those constraints. Riders described it as sterile, disconnected. Critics said it sounded like a tech demo, not a thunderous legacy. It lacked soul. It lacked grit. It lacked what made a Harley feel like home on two wheels. Worse, the electric gamble amplified the distance between the brand and its faithful. It gave the impression that leadership favored Wall Street credentials over the ride. The disconnect hit emotionally. Innovation imposed, not invited. Identity compromised. But beneath the emotion, financial alarms blared. The dashboard was about to bleed red. We've named the wounds and witnessed the failure. Now, the proof of collapse is coming into view. The dashboard turns red. The warning lights came fast. Harley's quarterly report spelled trouble in black ink that turned blood red before anyone could spin it. Shipments in North America dropped by nearly 15% compared to the previous year. Revenue slid again, wiping away the modest gains earned during the pandemic boom. The board tried to frame it as temporary market adjustments, but the numbers told a harder story. The math didn't lie. Production cuts were bleeding into sales, and inventory was collapsing faster than projections. Inside Milwaukee headquarters, the panic was visible. Managers were summoned to closed-door meetings. Charts and forecasts cluttered conference tables. Executives talked about resetting expectations, yet the mood was unmistakably defensive. They knew Harley's stock had slipped to its lowest level in almost a decade. Dealers, analysts, and even suppliers sensed the pulse weakening. What had once been a celebration of heritage and performance became a quarterly survival test. Harley's proud profitability targets turned into lifelines, each percent of margin treated like oxygen in a tank running low. For a company that had symbolized American endurance, the slide carried humiliation. The corporate vocabulary couldn't disguise what was happening. The motor sputtered. Dealers felt it before Wall Street did. When the spreadsheets turned red, the stories on showroom floors told the rest of the truth. Dealers on empty. Walk into a Harley dealership in small-town Ohio or out near Fresno, and you can feel the difference. The smell of new rubber and oil still lingers, but the air is quieter. The rows of chrome once stretching wall to wall now stand thin. Owners speak in half smiles. Allocations are tighter, they say, which really means fewer bikes, fewer customers, fewer reasons to keep the lights on past closing. Some dealerships once sold 100 motorcycles a month. Now they barely move 40. Staff hours have been cut. Parts departments double as storage rooms for unsold accessories. A few dealers have already shuttered after decades of loyalty. For local economies built around weekend rallies and tourist runs, every closed door ripples outward. Restaurants lose patrons, hotels lose bookings, whole towns lose their heartbeat. The corporate promise of premium scarcity landed as empty space on showroom floors. Smaller dealers begged the company for flexible financing or expanded shipments, but bureaucracy dragged. Harley's internal systems demanded strict adherence to the hardwire quotas that had once impressed investors. The irony was bitter. The strategy designed to make Harley desirable had made it inaccessible. And as dealers gasped for air, a new crisis emerged. No new generation waiting at the door. The next riders were supposed to keep the fire alive, but the price of entry locked them out. losing a generation. A generation ago, buying a Harley marked arrival. You'd saved for it, maybe sold a used truck or picked up weekend shifts. It was a badge of adulthood and pride. Today, that rite of passage has slipped away. The entry-level models that once offered affordable ownership vanished from showrooms or climbed beyond reach. A base model Sportster that once cost under $10,000 now pushed past $15,000. Financing tightened, insurance rose. The dream became arithmetic that no young worker could solve. Meanwhile, competitors filled the gap. Indian reintroduced mid-sized cruisers that balanced price and power. Yamaha and Triumph offered modern classics with lower maintenance and approachable financing. For first-time buyers, the math and the message both favored alternatives. Harley, the brand that had defined rebellion, had priced its own rebellion out of reach. Older riders noticed the silence at rallies. The tents that once buzzed with 20-somethings leaned toward gray beards and retirees. The torch wasn't being passed. Instead, it flickered in the wind of rising costs and corporate detachment. Inside Harley's boardroom, they mistook rebellion for a marketing slogan. While the company lost touch with youth, it also lost touch with its own language, and that wound cut even deeper. From clubhouse to boardroom, Harley's identity was forged in grease, sweat, and the roar of 1,000 engines. Yet over the past decade, that raw defiance gave way to boardroom diction. The same brand that once preached freedom now spoke in investor sound bites: desirability, margin optimization, shareholder value. These phrases looked sharp in presentations but rang hollow in garages. Riders felt the shift before they could name it. The posters changed. The ads swapped long roads for clean studios. The word brotherhood disappeared from brochures, replaced by lifestyle branding. Even Harley's rallies saw budget cuts while digital campaigns swelled. The emotional fabric that bound the community began to fray. Older bikers described it as the sound of rebellion fading into a conference call. Without that cultural heartbeat, numbers alone could not carry the brand. The balance sheet might have measured revenue, but it couldn't measure trust. When loyalty is traded for quarterly performance, the loss is invisible until it's irreversible. For a company that once made people feel immortal on two wheels, becoming just another corporate logo felt like death by silence. To win back trust, Harley must rebuild more than its balance sheet. Subscribe right now to stay ahead of the next Harley revelation, because the real story of this brand is still unfolding. 4 levers of survival. Artie Stars stood in front of employees, investors, and riders with one clear message. Harley could still be saved, but only through action. No slogans, no illusions. He outlined 4 levers that would decide the brand's fate. The first lever was pricing. He said Harley must build a ladder, not a wall. That meant reintroducing accessible models while preserving prestige at the top. The second lever was product cadence. Fewer gimmicks, more rhythm. Bikes had to evolve each season, not stagnate behind nostalgia. The third lever focused on dealers. Stars promised to restore oxygen to the showrooms by balancing supply and demand, ending the starvation cycle that had drained confidence. The fourth lever was the story itself. Harley's narrative needed to shift back from investor gloss to human grit. Freedom, roads, community, and brotherhood. The tone was pragmatic. No grand theatrics, just mechanics of survival. He spoke like a man who understood the math, but remembered the meaning. "We have no second decade to waste," he warned. The room fell silent. The message was clear. Harley's resurrection wouldn't come from spreadsheets, but from people and steel. But can Harley still build bikes people actually want? Stars believed the answer started in the design shop, where the next generation of Harleys must be born with authenticity and accessibility. Building bikes for tomorrow. In the engineering bays of Milwaukee, blueprints glowed under fluorescent lights. The plan was bold yet simple: create smaller, lighter machines that still carried Harley's unmistakable DNA. These motorcycles had to sound, feel, and look like Harleys, but fit younger wallets and different lifestyles. That meant lower seat heights, reduced weight, and engines tuned for urban riding, without losing the low-end torque that defined the brand. Stars directed designers to stop chasing trends and start building belonging. Financing would play as much of a role as horsepower. Flexible payment options, loyalty upgrades, and buyback programs would make entry possible again. The goal wasn't to cheapen Harley, it was to welcome riders back into the fold. Community became the design brief. Every model would link to mentorship rides, owner clubs, and digital platforms that guided new riders through the culture. Workshops and veterans events would pair seasoned owners with first-timers, ensuring Harley's traditions didn't die with the gray hairs. This new generation wouldn't replace the old guard, it would stand beside it. The roar could evolve without fading. And for the first time in years, hope returned to the drawing board. Bikes need factories that can deliver them on time, and that's the next fix. New models mean nothing if the assembly lines and supply chains can't support the promise. That brought Stars to the hardest part, rebuilding the backbone. Rebuilding the backbone. The heart of Harley has always been its factories, yet years of cost-cutting and over-complex product lines left them bloated, inconsistent, and behind schedule. Stars called for what he termed industrial honesty. Every model had to earn its place on the line. Redundant variations would be retired. Supply contracts would be renegotiated to ensure consistent parts and fair costs. Harley's future depended on precision, not production quotas. Inside the plants, veteran technicians became mentors again. Apprenticeships reopened to attract younger mechanics who could carry the craft forward. That move wasn't symbolic, it was survival. Without trained hands, quality control collapses. Stars insisted that every weld, every torque reading, and every assembly check be verified twice. He knew reputation travels faster than marketing. Transparency also returned. Warranty claims and recall data would no longer be buried. Dealers and riders would see real reports of performance and reliability. When you sell heritage, you sell trust. And trust is built one honest part at a time. The changes were painful. Layoffs shifted into retraining. Managers accustomed to spreadsheets had to walk the line, talk to machinists, and feel the hum of engines again. The rebuilding had begun. Inside those rebuilt plants, a new rhythm is forming, machines humming alongside mentorship. Older craftsmen teach apprentices the art of precision, passing down pride with every torque and weld. That connection between generations is Harley's real engine. When knowledge is shared, the brand's heartbeat grows louder, echoing beyond the factory walls. But the modern market still demands one more leap, electric on our terms. After rebuilding the mechanical backbone, Harley had to face the frontier it once mishandled: political football. Harley-Davidson has always been more than a motorcycle company, it is a symbol. That's why every election year the brand becomes a prop in campaign speeches. Politicians roll into rallies on borrowed bikes, promising to bring manufacturing home or to defend American steel. The chrome gleams under television lights while slogans echo through gymnasiums. But once the cameras pack up, Harley's real workers return to plants that face the same global pressures as every other manufacturer. Tariffs have turned Harley into a case study for trade wars. One administration's steel tax raised the cost of production. Another retaliated with export duties that punished overseas sales. Caught in the crossfire, Harley quietly shifted portions of its assembly abroad to survive. The move ignited outrage among hometown loyalists who saw outsourcing as betrayal. Critics shouted that Harley had abandoned the Buy American creed. But survival in a global market often means making hard compromises that sound unpatriotic but keep people employed. Today, Harley's leadership must walk that tightrope between politics and pragmatism. Publicly, they defend American heritage. Privately, they balance currency rates, supplier availability, and government incentives. Every decision becomes political ammunition. Yet beneath the noise of political speeches lies the quiet truth. Most riders don't care about party lines. They care about keeping factories open, paychecks steady, and the freedom to ride what they love. For them, Harley isn't a talking point. It's a birthright, a symbol of grit that politics can't own. But the loudest fight isn't in Washington, it's on the factory floor. Behind the headlines and handshakes, the real story lives in the noise of machines and the hands that keep them running. Step inside the York plant and the sound hits you first. Metal clanging, conveyors humming, boots on concrete. For decades, this has been the rhythm of Harley's heart. Generations of workers have carried the brand through wars, recessions, and corporate shakeups. Many of them grew up watching their parents clock in at the same gates. Their pride is tangible, their craft unmatched. But pride alone cannot secure paychecks. Unions are pressing harder than ever. They want expanded apprenticeships to bring younger talent into the trade, ensuring skills don't vanish when veterans retire. They demand updated safety protocols after years of lean budgets and aging equipment. And they are fighting for a fair slice of success through profit sharing. When Harley prospers, they argue, the people who build the bikes should prosper too. Management knows morale drives quality. That's why Stars has begun meeting directly with plant representatives, breaking the old habit of executive distance. He promises transparency, no more hiding production issues behind corporate silence. Yet even with improved dialogue, tension remains. Efficiency pushes against humanity, spreadsheets against sweat. For all the tension, there's still pride in the work. Break rooms display photos of fathers and grandfathers who built the same machines decades ago. Those pictures remind everyone why the struggle matters. Each weld isn't just metal joined together, it's generations bound by purpose, carrying the weight of an American legacy forward. Still, inside every factory, there's an unspoken code. These workers don't just assemble motorcycles, they assemble pride. Losing that would cost more than profit margins ever could. Even with pride intact, money is the ticking clock. While the factories fight for fairness, the accountants are fighting time itself, the countdown measured in cash and confidence. The ride isn't over, it's reborn. Harley's story isn't ending, it's shifting gears. The truth's out, the road's open, and the ride's not over. What happens next depends on every rider still holding the throttle. Stay sharp, stay loyal, and remember, legends only fall when riders stop believing.